Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abate, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists. First, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Professor Bola Akinterenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. And Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Welcome to This Day Live.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Yes, let's start with the elections in Kogi and Bayelsa. Saturday's Bayelsa and Kogi states governorship elections were largely marred by violence, characterized by ballot snatching, vote buying, intimidation, and assault on journalists, despite the heavy security deployment in the two states. The leadership of the Independent National Electoral Commission confirmed the development, saying there was violence and thuggery in several places. The electoral body condemned the resort to violence and thuggery by partisan interest to influence the outcome of the elections. In Bayelsa State, the governorship candidates of both the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress, Duye Duri and David Leon, disagreed over the credibility of the election. While Duri, who is the standard bearer of the People's Democratic Party, accused the All Progressive Congress of colluding with security agents to undermine the process, his counterpart, David Leon of the APC, commended the Independent National Electoral Commission for a peaceful process. Also recorded in some local government councils were alleged hijack of ballot papers, violence, sporadic shooting, vote buying, and late arrival of election materials. In the meantime, results from the local government areas in these two states have started trickling in. Now we had hoped, we had thought, we had expected perhaps that, the elections in Kogi and Bayelsa State will provide an opportunity for the Electoral Commission, the political parties, the security agencies to demonstrate or indicate at least that certain lessons have been learned from the general elections in February, March, considering the fact that, all these stakeholders, they carried out reviews of the general elections, only to have reports this time around that indeed it looks like nothing has changed. Prof, as they say in French, the two of you, you know how it is. C'est la même chose.
C'est la même chose.
Yes, let me start with you, Prof.
Well, I feel really disappointed because watching what went through and what Jega, the predecessor of Mahmoud, said, that we're still far behind where we ought to be, it seemed to have been the case with these elections, because while going through Kogi owns, and you see how people are afraid of coming out, or even when they try to come out, they are coming out to make trouble or to hijack or to kill or maim. Already we have had Dine Moloyo's brother is already dead and is gone forever. These are issues that we don't expect to come out at this time of our, growth in this democracy, 21st century. It's highly disappointing. In Bayelsa State case already, 3 local governments are being seen as non-valid in terms of what happened there, and it's a very, very disastrous situation as far as I'm concerned. And we have to look into it seriously. How I wish we had someone like late Yaradua, who finally came out to say, even after his own success, that there is something wrong and we must look into it. And I expect the president to think along what former Yaradua, President Yaradua, said about elections.
Well, but you recall that President Buhari also warned against ballot snatching, and he warned against the intimidation of voters. And he said that anybody that is apprehended will be made to go through the full process of the law. Yemi, let me come to you. It looks like enough is not enough yet with the mismanagement of elections and the deployment of able-bodied men, also known as thugs.
I think I'll disagree slightly with Prof about surprise. I'm not surprised. I mean, we reviewed what happened in Abuja on Tuesday. As far as I know, after the DSS action, the presidency and the executive have said nothing about what the DSS did. The National Assembly has said nothing, neither has the judiciary. So if the State Security Service is validated in shooting, using live bullets, pepper spray, at citizens that were stationary addressing the press, we were nowhere near the DSS building, we were at the corner of Aso Drive. So if in silence, and as I say, silence is consent, so if behavior like that was consented to on Tuesday, I don't think we should be surprised about similar behavior on Saturday. So as you said, able-bodied men deployed as thugs. They didn't deploy themselves as thugs. They didn't arm themselves. They were armed by politicians. And it's a replay of things that we saw happen in the February-March election cycle as well. So if there's nothing has happened as a response to that, we shouldn't be surprised at happenings we see in Kogi. I mean, obviously, INEC, again, this is not a nationwide election. You had 2 states to manage, so you needed to show up, make sure materials arrived on time. But I haven't been in rooms reviews with the commission. I also understand part of their challenges because they're also dependent on humans. So you contract NURTW or whoever it is you contract to do transportation for elections. And the morning of the elections, they say they're not moving. Unless you do X, Y, Z, that was not part of the contract. So then what? So yes, INEC gets the blame, but we also realize that everything is, they're human beings, they're Nigerians that are all parts of this process. So as long as impunity continues and people can get away with blackmailing, jeopardizing, or behaving badly, then we'll continue to have the types of elections we saw yesterday.
Prof, what's your own take? I mean, what do you see happening? Do you see, the matters going to court? Because now it looks like the courts determine elections in Nigeria more than the people themselves.
I expect that question. Because on this platform, I had the opportunity to argue that in Nigeria, very consciously, efforts are made to create an environment that is inclement. Ballot snatching, electoral violence, abduction, all this, they were done very consciously. That's my position. In the hope that when you do that, you forcefully win election, and you know what will happen. There will be protests. People will condemn. Candidates that are victims, that are aggrieved, will go to court. And then efforts will be made either to influence court decision. Even if there is no influencing of court decision, the whole period, at least, you have spent in going to court. And that aspect of violence will still be there. I am now saying that, contrary to the position of Professor Arioli, that he's surprised. What are you surprised for? What is the big deal? I belong to Yemi's school of thought. In this particular case, it is expected. 1 million times we are going to have elections in this country, it is still going to be the same pattern. Not until efforts are made, actually, to accept the notion, the conception of democratic elections. For now, this is the pattern. We have been following this pattern since 1962, right from the Western region crisis. This is the pattern we have been following. The next election, whether it's gubernatorial or local government election or presidential, are you going to set aside rigging, violence?
Well, Yemi, will you consider, reforming the electoral system, amending the Electoral Act, as has been suggested, adopting the electronic voting system, as some of the likely solutions to correct this? Because if we expect the politicians to change, and if we expect that thugs will be out of business, then you have to address the objective conditions that make this kind of mayhem possible.
Definitely, I completely agree. I think one of the things civil society organizations have said since the last election ended is that we need to quickly begin on this process. I mean, the president didn't sign it because he said that time was too short. I think to show seriousness, it should have been the first, one of the first things he signed when he came back into office, to show that, okay, I do believe in this, let me sign it now so that we can maybe put it into practice for Kogi Bayelsa perhaps, or begin to work on it so the issue of it being too soon to an election is null and void. The Senate, it passed first reading. I'm not quite sure if it's the same bill that the president didn't sign or they've done another one, but there's an amendment bill that passed first reading on Thursday, I believe. I'll have to read that to see. But yes, I do agree that it's something we need to definitely start on. We have 2 by-elections next year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, before 2023 rolls around.
Well, let's keep watching the developments. Yes, Prof.
If you look at one factor in this electoral violence, a government official was thrown into the sea, but she managed to swim and escape. What if she couldn't swim? What would have happened?
Sad story on all fronts.
So this is how we must begin to look at this problem of violence.
In Bayelsa, a boat, even capsized.
Oh, yes.
4 journalists, almost drowned, but they were lucky to have been rescued. Let's take another story. On Thursday, a federal high court sitting in Abuja threw out the rape case filed by Timi Dakolo's wife, Busola Dakolo, against the senior pastor of the Commonwealth of Zion Assembly, Coza, Biodun, fatoyinbo. According to the judge, Justice Uthman A. Musa, the matter amounts to injustice and an abuse of judicial process, adding that the case is empty and purely sentimental. Justice Musa said that the case was aimed more at cruelty than obtaining justice. By reacting to the ruling, Busola Dakolo has insisted that she will go on appeal. This was the position of our lawyer. And then, of course, she also added that she was glad that her voice was not silenced, which she considers victory, and went on to encourage women to keep the peace and never stop speaking out against the evil of rape and sexual abuse. The judgment has been received with mixed reactions, with a lot of people shocked and dismayed at the ruling. The outrage on Twitter can be described as that of a lot of people being disappointed at the judicial system in the country. And then, of course, you have some of the social media reactions out there on the screen. This person, Ekene, says, in as much as I sympathize with Busola Dakolo and believe her story, the fact the court threw away her case based on lack of evidence and awarded $1 million damages to fatoyinbo makes it clearer that the law isn't about the truth, but facts. You can also add that the law is about concrete evidence rather than morality. Yemi, before we go on break, you want to make a quick comment on this?
Oh, I have a lot to say. But I think a starting point is that the judgment, the processes weren't understood. Busola's civil suit, so there's a criminal investigation on the allegations of rape, but the civil suit was based on the effects of trauma that she suffered over the years. And there's no statute barred with that provision, with that claim. I forget the legal term for it. What Biodun Fatoyinbo and his lawyers were saying was that the position was statute barred. And we're saying that you're not even addressing if you committed the crime or not.
Well, maybe you hold your thoughts. Let's take a quick break. We'll go on a commercial break now here on Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, Professor Bola Akintenewa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Yes, before we went on that short break, we were already discussing the Busola Dakolo case with Pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo. And Yemi, you were raising a number of questions about the decision of the court in the matter.
So let's separate the two cases. So there's a criminal case of rape that the police are investigating. As far as we know, the preliminary investigations are done. So they need to now make the statement and say, should he be prosecuted, or does he have a case to answer, if I put it that way. So that's the criminal case. But what we also did, because Enough is Enough is supporting Busola's Not in My Church campaign on this matter, what we also did is go to court on the civil matter. And the civil matter is predicated on a tort that's novel in Nigeria, but basically says that you can be held liable for your actions, the effect of your actions on a person. And Busola is saying that Biodun fatoyinbo's actions has caused her trauma. Now, that tort is not statute barred, because as long as you can prove that it is an ongoing action and that she's continued to seek counseling, you can't say it's statute barred. But what I find very fascinating is that Biodun fatoyinbo's response is to say that it is statute barred. So you're not saying if I committed it or not, or if I have had any effect on you or not. I'm saying that what you are alleging that I did is statute barred, so you don't have a case. And the judge agreed with... Sure.
You have to know that, one, Biodun fatoyinbo has never at any time accepted guilt. Right? Two, the petitioner, has to provide concrete evidence that this is true. And if you are saying you are suffering from trauma, then you need to prove that the original cause of action really exists. And that's why the judge says, look, within the law, you have just within 6 years within which to bring evidence.
That's the issue,
but that you are out of time, you are statute barred, and the court also raised the question, why will a lawyer who knows, what the procedure says, still go ahead?
No, Mr. Evans. Let's be very clear.
Hold on, sorry.
No, I'm raising the questions.
No, you're raising the questions the judge is saying, but I am saying that the case, it's not been filed in Nigeria before, and the lawyer is aware of that, but it's been filed in other jurisdictions that we share the same sort of legal system. So he is saying that this is a tort that's been used in other climates. It's never been used in Nigeria. So why not address the merit of the issue rather than saying it's statute barred? By saying something is statute barred, you're not even saying... Look, let's look at the vice president, for example. When someone challenged him, he said, look, I'm willing to even forgo my immunity to make the point that I'm ready to defend my name. So Biodun fatoyinbo is not interested in...
He's not in a position to forgo his immunity.
No, but that's what I'm saying. He made the point to show how serious he takes the allegation. So even though he's not in a position to, he made the point, he said that to make a point. I am saying...
he can forgo if he resigns.
No. Whatever conditions there might be, he made that point. And I'm saying that Biodun fatoyinbo is not even interested in clearing his name to prove that I did not do it. Or say, do you think, you're saying, you're alleging that I did something. Let's trash it out so you can...
It's not for Biodun fatoyinbo to provide proof that he did not do it. It is the person who alleges that must prove.
No, hold on.
These are basic things.
Wrong choice of words. My point is that he's not interested in the merit of the allegation. He's interested in the technicality that throws it out. And that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, I subscribe to that argument. You see, the issue is this. We are told that fatoyinbo is not interested in getting the case tried.
Exactly.
So, the main focus of fatoyinbo is to prevent the matter from being taken to court for trial.
Exactly.
For trial.
Thank you, Prof.
So now, whether or not he engaged in the crime of rape is yet to be determined.
Yes, because there's still a criminal
And I think Yemi did right by differentiating between the criminal and the civil dimensions of the matter. So what the court has pronounced on now is the admissibility or non-admissibility of the case for trial.
Thank you.
So what is happening, even with the ruling, that does not mean that fatoyinbo had not actually engaged in the crime of rape. The allegation that he raped is still there. But as we talk about technical arguments, that look, why didn't you bring this matter up within the first 6 years, during which at least there wouldn't have been an argument of...
statute of limitation.
When you say it's statute bar, that means, well, it's no longer tenable.
It's out of time.
But now, the point being raised by Yemi, which should be understood at two levels, is that even though this matter had not been addressed within the framework of the judicial, framework of Nigeria, elsewhere within the Commonwealth, common law, this matter had been addressed elsewhere. And they're now saying that the effect, the trauma following that rape is still valid for...
Anyway, Prof, see, in law, there's something called res. Before you can go from one state to the other, you have to prove that that matter exists first. And that has not been done.
So let's try
because
it.
nothing can stand on.
So let's try it.
Or
That's the point. So the point
but what I think is important, in my view, is that, the
Before
courage...
you summarize, can I say this?
No, I'm not summarizing here. Professor Victor...
There is appeal process.
Yeah, they're still going for that.
Ended. So
what you can take from all of this that I see is that, one, we need to take a second look at our laws on rape. Those laws are too limited. They are outdated. They are not as modern as what you find in other jurisdictions. I mean, in the U.S., they've jailed Bill Cosby. R. Kelly, Robert Kelly, the artist, has also been jailed. Now, that would be very difficult here in Nigeria. Maybe we need to look at the laws.
As much as I agree with you, there is no disputing the fact that the stigma, the perception of the general public about the person of Fatoyinbo, regardless of what the court may be saying, people believe that actually he raped. Because it's not just the case of Dakolo now.
Yeah,
there were other cases there.
Yes, it may lose at the court of morality and at the court of public opinion.
That's
very true. And I think Busola Dakolo should also be commended for her courage, for her determination, for speaking up. And I think our example will embolden other ladies.
Can I just say this quickly about our judiciary? In the court, in the process of this, the court lost Busola's processes twice. So the first day in court, and the lawyer has written to that effect, the first day in court that it was called up, it took an hour to find the document. The whole file was missing. A few days later, so the judge got the file and then said, I'll have to read this. So he made no pronouncement. A few days later, the lawyer got a call from the clerk and said, well, we're missing 2 of your processes. Can you resend it to us? Now, with
obstruction.
Yes, exactly. So the stage is set. And we'll be back with an appeal, and let's see how this goes.
Professor Ariole.
Exactly. I see. I'm only worried about the trauma side because human being is human being, and he has a life to live. And the moment something precedent is disturbing the movement of his life, somebody should really intervene and see how best to go about it to calm the situation. I'm not too much disturbed about the legal technicalities and whatever. A human being is to be seen as being breached in his process of development, and somebody is being accused. And the person should really be humble enough to come out, or the justice process should really get the person to agree that, yes, he has really done something wrong to this person, and so that the person will move on and have a free... that's how I see it. The trauma side is where I get a bit worried about.
Controversial subject.
But it'll still be on.
But the weight of public opinion is on the side of Sola Dakolo, definitely.
Yes, precisely.
And rape, of course, is condemnable, whether it's proven in court or not. Let's take one more subject quickly. The Department of State Services has denied claims it is illegally detaining some notable people facing trials, with specific reference to the detention of a former national security advisor, Sambo Dasuki, the leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, Ibrahim el-Zakzaki, and the convener of the Revolution Now movement, Omoyele Sowore. The Department of State Services says that they have chosen to be detained in their facility as against going to a correctional facility, according to a statement by the Public Relations Officer of the DSS, Peter Afunaya, on Friday. Femi Falana, human rights lawyer, however, says in the last 1 week, the Department of State Services has given 3 reasons not to release his client, Omoyele Sowore, convener of the Revolution Now movement. He said the SSS had first claimed that it had wanted to release Sowore and Bakare, but for the fact that no one had showed up to receive them. However, when their families and lawyers offered to receive them, the SSS disqualified them. The SSS then turned around to say that it will only release the detainees to their sureties. Falana added that instead of apologizing for exposing Nigeria to undeserved odium, the spokesperson of the security agency tried to convince Nigerians that Sowore and Bakare, Mr. and Mrs. el-Zakzaki, and Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired, rather chose to be looked after by the DSS. Falana said the federal government had consistently disobeyed court orders on the release of detainees. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka and other top Nigerians have also condemned Sowore's continued detention. Professor Ariole, let me start with you. You know, they seem to be, the DSS seems to be telling Nigerians that, you know, DSS detention is the equivalent of a five-star hotel.
It's not tenable at all. It's not tenable. The issue is that the people involved are not hungry people, and they are not so underprivileged as to accept detention camp as the best place for them to be. These are people who are fighting for the right of, you know, underprivileged Nigerians or poor Nigerians or suffering Nigerians who should be allowed to come and express themselves openly and let the world know that this is what Nigerians are going through. Keeping them inside in detention means that there is still fear from the side of the government that their coming out could create more problem for the government. That's all I see. There is no, what DSS is saying is not tenable at all. It's just to show that they are afraid on their own side. And I wonder if lawyers could come out and defend them and get them bail, why wouldn't those same lawyers come out and receive them and get it acceptable as people who sign surety for them? So it's not, I don't accept that, that rule of DSS at all. We are not in America where detention camps are somehow better. Not talk of Nigeria own, that is like, you know, that's like a dungeon. So I disagree completely with DSS.
Well, on that note of disagreement, we'll take another short break here on Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Now, before we went on break, Professor Ariole was commenting on whether or not the DSS has a five-star hotel where Sowore, the Zakzakis, and Colonel Dasuki prefer to stay. But Yemi, what do you think? I mean, you have had some form of torture in the hands of the DSS only a few days ago.
I won't call it torture, but
well, they seized your phone.
They did, yeah.
You know, they harassed you. You know,
if
they
anybody
asked
from
you to
DSS
run.
is watching, you can delete the Guardian stuff. I want my phone. There are lots of pictures there that didn't back up. I'm appealing. Can I have my phone back? Please.
You are appealing to the DSS.
So give me my
please
phone.
Release your phone.
I want my pictures. They are very important to me. You can delete what you don't like there. Just give me my own pictures. But again, I'll have to disagree with Prof a little bit, because the DSS is actually, they're right in that sense, because the choice was made that they would rather be with DSS than into police custody or correctional facility. But that's really not the issue. The choice was made around where to be kept. But now that the court has granted Sowore and the rest of them bail, there's no issue about where I choose to be kept. They've granted me bail, let me go. And that really is the issue. And that DSS is not complying with.
Well, Prof, what's your take
See,
quickly on this?
At two levels. It is tenable, it is possible that Sowore and Co. might have asked for stay in DSS, you know, very possible.
They actually did.
You know, if you go to Kogi prison, you will know that heaven and hell, they are not the same thing.
Oh my God.
Secondly, if you go to Indonesia, Malaysian prisons, you discover that the Nigerians that were there, they refuse to come to Nigeria. Why? Because they live better there. But in the case of Sowore, all along, Yemi rightly pointed out, it's not a matter of bail granted by a court. The issue now is release them. There's no need for any safekeeping anymore. All right? They don't have any business staying there. I wish that the government of Nigeria, particularly the Minister of Foreign Affairs, can look at the international implications of not complying with the rule of law.
Okay, quite correct. I mean, I'm sure Yemi also agrees with you because she joined a group of concerned Nigerians to go and, ask the Department of State Services to release Omoyele Sowore and Olawale Bakare, who is also known as Mandate. We'll keep an eye on developments between the Department of State Security Services and the lawyers to both Sowore and Bakare. The reports reaching us indicate that collation is ongoing at the collation centers in Kogi State and also in Bayelsa State. And if we may just take a look at this and do some further analysis, because it will appear that certain patterns are beginning to emerge, and some persons are beginning to look forward to where the pendulum will swing in the gubernatorial elections in Bayelsa State and also in Kogi State, and particularly in the senatorial election in Kogi West. Some persons are already posting some of the results, which I think INEC frowns upon, because INEC insists that nobody should release any result, because INEC is the final authority to announce what comes out eventually.
That's not correct.
Okay,
INEC
what is
frowns
correct?
on announcing winners.
Yes, when you post the pictures on social
Oh, you
media,
can't stop me.
you're already
No. Part
announcing the
No,
results.
that's not true. No, results and announcing a winner are two different things. INEC, part of INEC's process is, I forget what the form is called, that they paste at the polling unit
Yes.
when counting is done.
Yes.
Now, if I take a picture of that and I share it on social media, there's no crime. I haven't broken any laws. What INEC then
Because
from
it's already pasted.
it's
already
public.
pasted.
It's a
Yeah,
public
but
document.
do people post the pictures of what INEC has released at the polling booth, or they type out
No, they can type it out
and they
or
put it
post
out?
it.
What
Yeah,
is the
either-
guarantee
either
that what
way.
they are putting online
But I'm saying
is
that it's
authentic?
not. So the fact that you lied doesn't mean that the fact that you posted it is illegal. I'm just saying that we need to differentiate what the issue is. So the fact that you posted a lie, they should charge you you lied. But releasing results that were posted in my polling unit. So if I was in Kogi and I voted, I can share the results from my polling unit. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's one of the things we advocate as well, that citizens in polling units have the sort of they're in the best position to share results, because the results that I share in my polling unit must match the results that they declare when they're collating. Because if it doesn't, and it's my polling unit, and they say something that's different, I can challenge that, especially if I have a picture of what INEC itself had
You are not
posted.
supposed to take a phone to a polling station.
No. Mr. Abati,
Oh,
which
is that not
election are you
true?
talking? You would run for deputy governor.
No.
It's not true.
Are you allowed to carry phones?
Yes,
to
you are
the-
not allowed to carry your phones to vote,
To the
at the
voting,
polling
polling booth. That's what
or
they
not
said.
to the polling unit. So when you enter the booth to vote, and the reason why is simple, they didn't want people taking pictures of how you voted, so you now are not able to get paid, quote unquote, for how you voted. But you can take your phone, of course. Because it's phones, I mean, all the footage that we've
because
seen.
I've been seeing all kinds of persons, giving contradictory figures, and that can be frightening because it can be a recipe for chaos.
Fake news.
Some people can say, "Oh, these are the correct figures. They manipulated," So, but I don't know. I mean, we can't have multiple authorities, individuals,
The
all
result
announcing
of,
results.
INEC will be final.
Well,
But my
certainly.
worry- that.
my worry
Yes.
basically is cancellation of votes going on as is going on in Kogi State now. For now, I've had about 20,000 votes already cancelled. I wonder what the outcome of the result will be if already within 50% of votes already collated, you have 20,000 votes going out without being accounted for. There could be problem of inconclusive results again, as we witness in Osun State. So I don't really know what INEC is doing to, forestall such things before it gets into a point where people will be worried, a lot of votes cancelled. Is it that people were not being told to behave themselves well as we are worried about and whatever?
What do you mean people are not told to behave themselves?
I don't know, but within the security people and whatever who are concerned
As
also
we
now.
said, they can get away
But
with
the
it. So how
security
you
people were there.
They were part and parcel of it.
And yet,
Yeah, the security people now, that's what it means
In their
now. They
presence.
also,
So telling anybody to behave is not. What I'm trying to say is that if you have the power to behave how you want, Who's going to tell you to behave yourself is my
The
question.
security people are there to caution you and
No,
get
but
you
it's the
right.
security people who are part of the problem.
That's the problem we are in now, exactly. You know.
Professor Akintere, what's your assessment of the role that has been played by the security agencies, particularly the police, which led the process? Previously, we complained that, we should limit the role of the military, and I think that a statement was made to that effect, that the military will play extremely limited role. And in fact, in Kogi and Bayelsa, nobody could complain of any militarization. And yet the police, I don't think they've been able to do well. A spokesperson for the police said, well, the reason they couldn't really engage the hoodlums was because they didn't want to make the mistake of shooting civilians, voters. And I was wondering at what point, did the police become this enlightened? What's your assessment? Because with what has happened in Kogi and Bayelsa, some people may well make a case next time around that maybe the military should come in. Since the police, when they are supposed to act, they don't want to act. And in Kogi, there were reports of people wearing police uniform, using police vehicles to attack hotels, to attack polling units.
But during the elections, February, March, is that one of the things the army said as well? So it's not, I don't think it's peculiar to police. The army did exactly the same thing in February, March. Said that part of the people that they saw were not one of theirs. So obviously there were people in army uniform that were not members of Nigeria's army. So we stopped the army from these elections. The police did exactly the same thing. Look, the point is still, as long as there's impunity, the army invited CSOs to submit reports based on our observations of the elections and the role of the military. Rivers was a classic example. Till today, the army has done nothing about those reports. So they did the show and dance of inviting reports, inviting submissions, but no investigation has happened. So as you rightly said, for Kogi and Bayelsa, we say the army should stay back and we empowered the police, but then empowered the police to do exactly the same thing, run amok.
Prof, what do you think?
The policemen acted as directed. Why? I will ask, how do you explain the fact that vote buying was on? Why is it that the voter, the buyer, the vendor are not afraid of security men?
Exactly, that's it.
Why is it? Don't look at the problem at the level of the security forces, first of all. The people, the voters, please, they already knew, they know that nothing will happen. Since already there must have been a sort of entente, understanding at this level. Now when you come to the level of the police, and you are now thinking that probably in the foreseeable future, they may want to bring the army. I will tell you, look, if this election holding were to be presidential election again, the army will be there because it is more serious a problem. It's because it is it's happening at a lower level.
Exactly.
That's why the policemen are there. And what are the policemen doing? Absolutely nothing. Abduction of INEC officials, intimidation, ballot snatching, in the presence, in the glare
of the security
of the security people.
It's
the argument given during the presidential
election. Videos that was shown. I even saw one policeman running away.
Yeah, precisely.
Now because he's not empowered.
So you see,
He wants to live to fight another day.
so this is the issue. Now, what is it that the Buhari administration has to explain? What is it? Please, you see, Nigeria is not capable of developing. Why? Because the leadership itself doesn't want development. And unless development has new meaning, if development implies improvement in lifestyle, quality of life, then in this case, I think Buhari is far from it.
We'll take another short break here on Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll continue our examination of the electoral processes in Kogi and Bayelsa states. Don't go away. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bulitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Now, before we went on break, Yemi and Prof had made some points, and Prof was saying, well, don't let us blame the security agencies alone. How about the people themselves? Professor Ariole, is it not these same people that will suffer the effect of the hijack of their democratic will? Why are the people so willing to collect money on election day? Because one of the things we said in February, March, we were telling the electorate, look, if you collect money, you collect 4,000 or you collect 2,000, is that what you will spend for the next 4 years before the politicians come back to you? But our people don't seem to care, whether it's in Bayelsa or in Kogi or in Edo State or in Oyo State. They just collect money on election day. What's responsible for this cynicism?
Well, it's a problem of poverty. Everybody knows, and Nigeria has already been declared as the poverty capital of the world.
Poverty in Ghana, there is
Yeah,
poverty
but it's
in other
not
places.
as we see it in Nigeria, for sure. And the population is too high in Nigeria in terms of poverty. And what I'm trying to say is that, you see, the government is also not helping matter. Letting people know you release 10 billion naira for Kogi at the point they are going for election. Of course,
The money was not for election.
What we know
It
it
was
wasn't for
payment for
exactly.
federal projects that have been...
But Professor Ariole was clear.
Yes,
he
but-
said they released it at the point
Of
when
election.
He did not say it was for election.
So whatever be the case,
Wait until time of
the
election.
expectation is there that I must get my own share from whatever has.
They couldn't release it on Monday.
Yeah, whatever it is, at least the hope is there that whatever we do and get whatever we want to get for the governor sitting as the governor, something will happen, I mean, as a return to what we have done. So this is the issue. There are some emotional things you don't bring in when poverty is really disturbing human beings, you know, because the moment you set it in, the senses are gone. And that's exactly what is happening. The senses of the people who are poverty-ridden, you know, it's almost gone. They are no more thinking along the line of...
Election time is time for money sharing.
Exactly. You know,
That's the way people perceive it.
yeah, it's like a holiday...
It's a very obvious excuse to give.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, are the people so unenlightened that they will allow, you know, politicians to take them for a ride all the time? Because, I mean, you know, there are other people who tell the electorate, look, don't collect money. You will be mortgaging your future. You know, don't allow yourself to be used as a thug. The children of these politicians are on holiday or in schools overseas.
Are you trying to suggest that majority of the voters are enlightened?
In
Is that what
I wouldn't underestimate, you know, the ordinary voter in Nigeria. I think the people know.
Please go to the villages, the rural areas. All right? The thinking is that, look, this is time for election. Okay. And people will want to have their own share of what they believe had been looted money by politicians. It's as simple
That's
as
what
that.
they say.
Well,
So
Yemi, what do you think? I mean, you have been on the field
So I think
as an observer.
To Prof. Akintarewa's point, there's an enlightenment that understands the dynamics you just played out. The children are in school abroad, they've looted money. But this is the one time in the 4 years where the politicians come to the voters and are a bit, shall I say, more humble, if I want to use that word. They're a bit more humble. So you share Ankara, you share money, you share this, and I can also place a premium on my vote and get something in the immediate. I mean, I tease that if people want to sell their votes, they should make it a premium price. So 500 naira is really chicken change. If you want to sell the vote, sell it at a price that will cost. But I think we also underestimate the power dynamics of election is done, they're in office. I don't see them for another 4 years. So that is where the work needs to be. So yes, you can come around elections and say, don't sell your vote, you're mortgaging your future. But even the people that come around election time to sell that message, after election time, they're not there to pay school fees. They're not there to help continue that, which is why a lot of work needs to be done around civic and voter education. I mean, some of the radio programs that we have, when citizens realize that they can engage, that they can ask questions and they can get results, there's sort of a light bulb moment. But these things cannot be one-offs. They have to be consistent, and it's an investment of time and resources. But when it's election season, as Prof said, it's now. They are here now. They're offering me this now. So why shouldn't I take it now?
So our democracy is transactional.
Very much so.
Prof,
very
something
much so.
happened in
because not
Kogi.
just sorry, sir, not just about voters as well. Because even if you look at it at the level of policy making, from National Assembly, horse trading, the executive, it's transactional even in the people that we choose to give appointed positions. You repay people for the work that they do, quote unquote, as ministers or as head of parastatals. That's part of the transactional of our
Well, Prof,
if you are on ground, you will discover that when we talk about vote buying, it's not one-on-one. They have representatives.
Exactly.
Prof, you know, because he tried to run for office in the States.
So you see, the representatives will negotiate with them to say, I have so number of people, and you should give so amount.
Prof, you are revealing trade secrets.
When it is time for voting, they come there to verify that, okay, you collected money, and they want to see who you are voting for.
But Prof, let's look at the situation in Kogi. At the final rally, you know, APC chieftains, wives of APC chieftains were in Kogi. The governor of Kaduna State was there. And their main message to the Kogi electorate is that, we know that Yahaya Bello has not done well in the past 4 years. He was owing you staff salaries, you know, civil servant status. But it's because he's a young man. Forgive him, you know, vote for him. He will learn, he will improve. And then the governor of Kaduna State knelt down. The deputy governor of Edo State, Philip Shaibu, he also knelt down. What do you make of that?
And Aisha Buhari as well lent her voice to that begging as well.
But the first lady did not kneel
She
down.
did. I said lent her voice to that begging, is what I said. And he said she knelt down.
Yes, Prof. What do you make
my
of it?
position is just to note the fact that...
Meanwhile, the governor himself didn't go on his knees.
No.
He stood there.
Yeah.
And he's a young man. And Governor Erufai is older than him, but he stood there. Sorry, Prof, because I want to talk.
You are concerned.
I want to talk on the matter. No, I wanted Prof to please. I will speak after Prof.
You see, the nexus between community and the electorate is what they have drawn attention to. In a given community, if you want the impact, if you want the community to support you, you must learn to go back to the roots. That's what had actually happened. You know, generally, the mere fact that the supporters told the electorate that the governor didn't do well, he's a young man, but give him another second chance to learn and do that. On the one hand, it's ridiculous. And it clearly shows that the people, at the end of the day, are not able to define their own future. They don't know what interests are at stake. But to the extent that they are able to appeal to the conscience of the public, and the public will now dance to their tune, will accept. That is still a modern way of campaign, getting people to come back.
Quickly, because we have just about 2 minutes to go on this program today.
So 2 points quickly. It reminds me of, I think it was Igbeni Dion that said if someone fails, you allow them to repeat.
Exactly.
So that's basically what they were saying for Yahaya Bello. But I think more fundamentally, and I think more painfully for me, is that Governor El-Rufai doesn't govern his state that way. Yahaya Bello sat for 4 years. The whole of the APC did not deem it fit during that 4 years to call the young man into a room and address and help him govern his state properly and treat his constituents better. It was acceptable behavior, and it's a huge indictment on the state and on the party, rather, even for the First Lady to lend her voice to sort of that display of just utter disdain for the people of Kogi. And also Governor El-Rufai, because you won't do that in your state, but it's okay for the people of Kogi, and you're now begging for him to come back and do nothing. And that APC as a party, if, to your point, if Kogi constituents was as enlightened and forward-thinking as civic education would have allowed them to be, that display alone should have been the reason they needed to say, nah,
yes.
we're not voting for you. Because even your party agrees that you are useless. Your party just came to tell us you are useless. So why should we vote for you? Including the first lady of the country, that you are useless. No, we're not voting for you.
But that is politics a la Nigeriana. That's what makes us different.
Let us see the outcome, how the people will decide whether the people of Kogi State listen to Rufai and Co or not. We'll find out, you know.
Even, as you said, even he was not
Yes,
repentant.
we have to go now. You've been watching Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I'm Ruben Abati. For my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching. See you next week.